I came home with a $15 million lottery ticket in the inside pocket of my work jacket, and my mother told me to pack. My name is Brett Vance. I'm 36, and I had driven 3 hours from Jacksonville because I wanted my parents to hear about the Florida Lotto from me first. Not from some smiling anchor on the evening news. I didn't even make it past the kitchen table. The brass dinner bell was still sitting on the counter. Same bell, same house, same room I had helped keep from the bank for 6 straight years. Then my mother looked up and said, "Pack your things. This room is Megan's now. You're a grown man. Brett, figure it out." My sister had moved back that morning, so I figured it out. I didn't cry. I didn't explain. I walked out with the winning ticket still in my jacket. Let me take you back to the afternoon I won. The fluorescent light over the gas station counter buzzed like it was about to die, while the clerk ran my ticket through the scanner a second time. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared at the little screen, then looked at me, then looked back down, like the machine might correct itself if he gave it another second. There was a line forming behind me. A man in work boots sighed hard enough for everyone to hear. Somewhere near the freezer case, a kid was begging his mother for a blue slushie. "Sir," the clerk said, his voice suddenly careful, "you're going to want to sit down." I didn't sit down. I held the edge of the counter and read the numbers off the screen myself, one by one, slow and exact, because in my job, one wrong digit can cost somebody their house. The numbers matched, all of them. $15 million. I wish I could tell you my first thought was a boat, a beach house, quitting my job, anything normal. It wasn't. My first thought was my mother, not the flat voice she used with me, but the warm one she saved for church people and neighbors. The one that sounded proud when other people could hear it. "Mom first," I said, under my breath. That's embarrassing to admit at 36 years old. I had coworkers who would have hugged me. I had Aunt Lorraine, who would have shouted loud enough to scare the building. But the person I wanted to tell first was the woman who had spent my whole life looking past me. So I bought a bottle of water I never opened, tucked the ticket behind my visor, and drove 3 hours toward Brandon, already planning how I'd pay off my parents' house. You learn a family by where you stand in its photographs. There's one on the wall in my parents' hallway, taken the Christmas I was 26. Megan is dead center, mid-laugh. My mother's arm wrapped around her waist. My father has one hand on Megan's shoulder, like he's anchoring the whole room around her. And then there's me, right edge of the frame, half a step back, slightly out of focus, because the camera chose the middle to be sharp. You could crop me out of that picture, and still have a complete-looking family. That was my position. Not hated, not exactly. Just settled into the background so long everybody forgot I had ever been placed there on purpose. Megan was the one they worried about. And worry in my family was the loudest kind of love. Megan had the boyfriends who broke her heart, the jobs that never fit, the dramatic exits, the late-night phone calls, the crises that required prayer chains and casseroles, and everyone speaking in soft voices. I was the other kind of child, the steady one. "Brett's fine," my mother would say, waving off the idea of me like a fly near a picnic plate. "He doesn't need all that fuss. He's always handled himself." So I handled myself. I built a quiet, useful life out of being the man nobody had to worry about. I became a senior title examiner in Jacksonville. I read deeds, mortgages, liens, judgments, all the little paper trails people leave behind when they try to hide what they've done. I got good at finding lies in documents. I got worse at finding them in my own family. For years, they called me strong, like it was a compliment. I didn't understand yet that strong was just the word they used for the things they intended to take. There was a brass dinner bell on the kitchen counter in that house, and it belonged to my grandmother. Grandma Ruth lived with my parents during the last decade of her life. In the back bedroom that caught the morning sun. She was small by then, all bones and soft cardigans, but when she rang that bell for supper, the sound filled the whole house like it had authority. 2 clear rings from the foot of the stairs. That meant everyone came. When I was a kid, I had already learned to hang back. Megan would run in first, talking before she even sat down. My parents would turn toward her like flowers toward light. I'd drift near the doorway, waiting to see if there was still room. Grandma Ruth always saw me. She would pat the chair beside her and say, "There's always a seat for you, Brett. Always that chair." Always her hand on the table, waiting. Years later, when I came home to help, after Dad lost his job, she'd find me washing dishes after midnight and press her palm between my shoulder blades. "Don't let them make you small," she'd say. "You hear me? Don't you let them. To understand why that kitchen broke something in me, you have to go back 6 years to the night I signed." It was spring when the letters started coming. I was already in Jacksonville, building the kind of small, careful life a man builds when he has learned not to ask for much. Then my father called me on a Tuesday evening, and his voice did something I had never heard it do before. It shook. "We're going to lose the house." "Brett," Gary Vance said. He had been laid off from the plant after 22 years. They called it restructuring, which is a clean word for handing a man a cardboard box and making him carry half his life through a security gate. Then came the hospital bills after a heart scare that turned out to be nothing and still cost everything. 2 missed mortgage payments became 3. Then came the bank letter. My father sent me a picture of it. I sat at my own kitchen table and read the words I had read 100 times for strangers: acceleration, default, right to cure. Except this time, my childhood address was typed at the top. There was a family meeting. There always is in a story like this. My mother cried. My father stared at the table like the wood had personally betrayed him. Megan was there too, between apartments, between jobs, promising she would help however she could, then never explaining what that meant. Nobody asked her to. They all looked at me. I had the credit score. I had the steady job. I had no wife, no kids, no dependents, and no visible crisis of my own. In my family, that made me available. "You're the only one steady enough to do this," my mother said. She meant it like praise, so I did what I had always done. I solved the problem. I refinanced the house into a new loan with my name on it because that was the only way the numbers would clear. I went onto the deed as an owner along with my parents. I took over the payments, a little over $2,000 a month, pulled automatically from my account before I could feel it leave. The bank was satisfied. The letters stopped. Grandma Ruth kept her back bedroom with the morning light. My parents kept the house they had lived in for 30 years. And I told myself I had finally done something this family could not overlook. At the closing table, my mother watched the notary slide the stack of papers toward me. She didn't say thank you, not exactly. She just nodded at the pen and said, "You're the one without all the complications." I signed. I always signed. After that, the payment became part of who I was. I never sent an invoice. I never brought it up at Thanksgiving. I told myself it wasn't a loan. It was the rent I paid on belonging. For 6 years, no one said thank you out loud. Not when the roof leaked over Grandma Ruth's room. Not when the air conditioner died in August and I wired the money. They just kept calling me strong, and I kept mistaking being needed for being wanted. The morning of Grandma Ruth's funeral, the bell sat on the kitchen counter, and nobody touched it. I noticed it the way you notice a clock that stopped. A small wrongness that makes the whole room feel off balance. The house was full of people, speaking in low voices. Casseroles wrapped in foil lined the counter. Men I barely knew shook my hand too hard and told me she was in a better place. Women hugged my mother while she accepted grief with the polished grace she usually saved for church, but the bell didn't ring. Grandma Ruth's chair sat at the foot of the table, pulled out just a little, like she might still come down the stairs and need it. Nobody sat there when the last cars finally pulled away that evening. I went into the kitchen, wrapped the brass bell in a dish towel, and slid it into my bag. I took it. No one noticed. 3 months later, I won the lottery and drove home with the ticket tucked behind my visor. I walked through the screen door with my grandmother's voice still somewhere in my chest and the words, "Mom, you're not going to believe this," already shaped in my mouth. My mother looked up from the kitchen table and said, "Pack your things," for a second. I thought I had misheard her. Then Megan came down the stairs, holding a cardboard box against her hip. Inside were my old work shirts, a framed baseball photo from high school, and the little wooden box where I used to keep ticket stubs and pocket knives. She kept her eyes on the floor. "Thanks, Brett," she said softly, like I had offered. I looked past her toward the hallway, toward the room I had grown up in, toward the house I was still paying for. I didn't argue. The thing about being the reliable one for 36 years is that silence comes automatically. It is older than thought. I picked up my keys and walked out the front door. I had personally kept the bank from changing the locks on. Then I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel, parked in my parents' driveway, 3 hours from my own bed, with $15 million they didn't know about. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. Payment received. Mortgage. Their mortgage? Paid by me that same week, while they boxed up my childhood to make room for my sister. I drove back to Jacksonville that night and claimed the ticket the next morning. People think winning that kind of money should feel like lightning. It didn't. Not then. It felt like paperwork, forms, signatures. A woman behind a desk explaining options in a voice she had clearly used before. At one point, they asked if I wanted to keep my name private for the allowed window. I paused with the pen in my hand. Then I thought, with a flatness that still surprises me, why would I hide I hadn't done anything wrong? I had nothing to be ashamed of. Secrets, I would learn soon enough, were the family business. I had just never been invited into them. So I signed where they pointed. I always signed. By evening, the local news ran the cheerful little segment, "Hometown man wins 15 million in the Florida Lotto." My name was right there under my face. By noon the next day, my mother had called twice. The first voicemail was the warmest she had ever sounded while speaking directly to me. "Sweetheart," Sharon Vance said, using the church voice, "we saw the news." "Oh, honey, we are so proud of you. You have to come home and celebrate with us. We only ever want what's best for this family." I stood in my apartment kitchen and listened without moving. Then, under her voice, low and busy in the background, I heard Megan say something that turned the air cold. "We just have to get through the weekend. It'll be fine. Once the house is finalized." Finalized. That was the word that made me sit down. I run titles for a living, so I ran my own. That sounds simple when I say it now. At the time, it felt like opening a door I had spent years walking past on purpose. The county recorder's office had everything online. Deeds, mortgages, liens, releases, all scanned and stamped in neat little rows. I had spent more than a decade reading strangers' family secrets in those records. Divorces hidden in transfer dates, debts buried under legal descriptions, betrayals dressed up in notarized language. I had never once pulled my own family's house. You don't look for rot in the walls you still hope are holding you up. But Megan had said finalized. And that word had teeth. I typed in the Brandon address I had been paying for, and watched the chain load in date order. The 2020 refinance was there, my name on the mortgage, my name on the deed, everything exactly where it should have been. Then I saw a document I had not prepared, signed, or known existed, quitclaim deed, recorded March 2024. I opened the scan. My parents, Gary and Sharon Vance, granting and quitclaiming all their right, title, and interest in the property to Megan Vance, my sister, notarized, witnessed, filed with the county. For a while, I just sat there and looked at the screen. 2 years. 2 years that document had been sitting in the public record while I kept paying more than $2,000 a month, while my mother hugged me at Easter, while my father asked me to cover the air conditioner, while Grandma Ruth was dying in the back bedroom. I had helped keep dry when the roof leaked. They had given Megan their share of the house and said nothing. When the first wave of it passed, I did the only thing I know how to do when the ground moves under me. I built a record. I opened 6 years of bank statements and exported every mortgage payment into a single column, month after month, line after line, until the total sat at the bottom like a verdict. More than $150,000 out of my account, into that house. The grief in me cooled into something harder. I wasn't family. I was a payment plan, but a payment plan did not explain what I had heard in that voicemail. If the house was already Megan's, at least on paper where my parents' share was concerned, then why was she talking about getting it finalized this weekend? Why the sudden celebration? Why did my mother go from throwing me out to calling me sweetheart the second my name hit the news? If they had planned this, there had to be a date. So I went back into the chain the next morning with a colder eye. That is what happens when you stop reading like a son and start reading like an examiner. You stop hoping the documents will be kind. You stop searching for an explanation that lets everyone stay innocent. You start looking for the piece that does not fit. And there it was, a cash-out refinance, pending. A cash-out refinance is exactly what it sounds like. You take the equity built up in a house and turn it into money. Not someday money, not theoretical money. Cash at closing, money wired out after signatures are finished, and the title company is satisfied. The amount wasn't final, but the estimate was sitting there in the file, about $120,000. I already knew who that money was for, Megan, the sister with no savings, no stable job, and a mother who had spent her whole life translating Megan's bad decisions into emergencies the rest of us were expected to solve. A cash-out refinance needs a clean closing. It needs a table, a title company, a notary, a stack of documents, a pen placed exactly where somebody wants your hand to go. So I made one ordinary phone call to the title company handling the file. I kept my voice professional, mild, boring, even. The way you sound when you do not want anyone on the other end to know your pulse is hammering under your collar. "My name is Brett Vance," I said. "I'm on title for the Brandon property. I just wanted to confirm the scheduled closing date." There was clicking on the other end. A pause. Then a woman told me the closing was set for Monday. Monday, 3 days away. That afternoon, my father called. At least, I thought he called. What I got was worse. Either he had butt-dialed me or he thought he had hung up from another conversation and hadn't. For a few seconds I heard rustling, then my mother's voice somewhere in the background, sharp and low, then my father. "Closing's Monday," Gary said. "We just need his signature." His signature. I sat down on the top step outside my apartment and stared at the phone in my hand until the call went dead. They didn't need me gone. They needed me signing, and once I understood that, everything rearranged itself into one clean, ugly line. My room being handed to Megan was not random. My mother's cold little speech in the kitchen was not a mood. The sudden sweetness after the lottery news was not pride. It was not love arriving late. It was a timeline. Step 1, clear me out of the house so I would feel exactly what they had always trained me to feel, that I did not really belong there unless I was useful. Step 2, wait for me to be hurt, off balance, hungry for any scrap of welcome. Step 3, call me back for a family dinner, dressed up as a celebration. Step 4, put me in front of relatives, church people, maybe even a notary, and slide one document across the table while everyone smiled. They were not trying to steal my share by force. They were trying to get me to give it away. That was the part that made my breathing slow down, because they could not take it. The quitclaim deed from 2024 only transferred what my parents owned. Their interest, their share. It could not touch mine. My name was still on the deed. My name was still on the mortgage. I was a vested owner of that property, whether my mother liked it or not. The new lender's title company would see the same thing I saw. A chain with a problem, a title cloud. Parents conveying their interest to Megan while another owner remained in place, still attached to the loan, still holding rights that could not be wished away over Sunday dinner. There would be no clean title. No clean title meant no insured closing. No insured closing meant no cash out refinance. Not without me, not without my signature on a quitclaim deed of my own. There is a line my first supervisor taught me when I was 24 and still new enough to believe paperwork was mostly boring. You can't convey what isn't yours to convey. I had said that sentence 100 times about strangers, sitting on that apartment step, with the Florida heat pressing against my shirt and my father's words still ringing in my ear. It finally became personal. They were betting everything on the version of me they knew, the son who solved problems, the brother who stepped aside, the man who paid quietly, the one who signed. I thought about calling my mother right then. I thought about driving back to Brandon and putting the documents on the table before they had time to blink. I thought about every loud, satisfying version of this, where I finally raised my voice in that house and made them hear me. Then I thought about my mother's voicemail, that warm, public voice, and I understood the most powerful thing I could do was nothing. Say nothing, correct nothing, warn no one. Let them build their little family dinner. Let them invite whoever they wanted. Let them polish the trap, set the table, and put the pen down in front of me. Then, when they reached for my hand, I would let the record speak, out loud, in front of everyone. 2 days before the dinner, Aunt Lorraine drove to Jacksonville. She said she was bringing the last of my things from the house, but the cardboard box she carried up to my apartment was light enough to hold with one hand. A few shirts, some old books, a cracked picture frame from my bedroom wall, the kind of leftovers people pack when they are trying to make an eviction look like housekeeping. She set the box on my kitchen floor and stood there for a moment with both hands wrapped around a coffee mug I had not seen her drink from. Aunt Lorraine was my father's younger sister, Grandma Ruth's daughter. She had the same sharp eyes Ruth had, the kind that made it hard to lie politely. Finally, she looked at me and said, "You carried that house alone for 6 years, Brett." I didn't answer. My throat had gone tight so fast it made me angry. Lorraine looked down at the mug, "And we all let you." That was the first time anyone in my family had said it out loud. Not hinted at it, not joked around it, not called me steady, or strong, or responsible, until the truth disappeared under nicer words. Said it. You carried it alone. I turned toward the window because I did not trust my face. "I knew about the payments," she said. "Everybody knew. We just decided not to look at them too hard, because it was easier that way." She set the mug down carefully. "But I didn't know about that deed. I swear to you. Brett, I didn't. Sharon never told me they put their share in Megan's name." Then she reached into her purse and pressed something into my palm. A key, a worn brass house key, on a little loop of red string. "There's a room at my place," she said. "There always has been. You hear me? Always." I closed my hand around the key until the teeth bit into my skin. We talked for a long time after that, the kind of talk families only have after somebody dies, and the truth starts leaking through the cracks. Lorraine told me Grandma Ruth had fought them on the house 2 years ago, when my parents first started talking about getting things in order and making sure Megan was taken care of. Ruth had said no, not while Brett was paying, not behind Brett's back, not without telling the grandson keeping a roof over all their heads. They nodded, Lorraine said. They let her think she'd won, then they waited until she got weaker and did it anyway. Grandma Ruth died never knowing the deed had been filed. That landed somewhere in me I still do not have a name for. I had the bell in my bag, still wrapped in the dish towel. I did not take it out. I just laid my hand over the canvas and felt the weight of it there. The next morning, I went to see Patricia Holloway. She was a real estate attorney and closing officer whose office sat in a plain building between a dentist and an insurance agency. Nothing dramatic. Beige carpet, a humming water cooler, someone's birthday cake going stale in the break room. I brought everything. The chain of title, the 2020 refinance, the March 2024 quitclaim deed, the pending cash-out refinance, 6 years of bank statements lined up in clean columns. I laid it all on her desk and asked one question. Am I right, or am I just a son reading too much into his own family? Patricia did not rush. She read every page slowly, with the kind of silence that made me feel more respected than comforted. Then she squared the stack, folded her hands on top of it, and looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Vance, she said, your name is on this property. She tapped the title report once. They cannot close without you. They cannot refinance around you. They cannot clean this up unless you voluntarily sign away your interest. I sat back. She held my eyes. That is not a small thing, she said. That is everything. A stranger in a borrowed conference room treated my signature like it mattered more than my own family had in 36 years. I wrote her a check before I left. It was the best money I had spent in my life, including the $1 I spent on the ticket. The casserole showed up before my mother did. She had driven 3 hours from Brandon to Jacksonville, with a foil-covered dish balanced in both hands, and her church smile already arranged on her face. My mother, who had complained for years that I never came home enough, had somehow found the energy to stand on my apartment welcome mat like she belonged there. I had not given her my address in years. She stepped inside before I could decide whether to invite her. Oh, Brett, she said, looking around my small, clean apartment. This is nice, really nice. So quiet, though, must get lonely. There it was, the first hook. She set the casserole on my counter like she had cooked love into it instead of strategy, then sat on my couch without being asked. I stayed standing. For a few minutes, she talked about nothing. The drive, the weather, how everyone at church was just thrilled about my blessing. She said blessing the way other people say inheritance, like it had already been divided in her mind. Then she folded her hands in her lap. Your sister has nothing, Brett. I looked at her. You know what that divorce did to Megan? She's trying to rebuild. She needs a place where she can feel safe. I said nothing. My mother softened her voice. That was always the part to watch for. The softer she got, the closer the knife was. And now look at you, she said. Millions. God has taken care of you in a way most people never see in their whole lives. You can buy any house you want. 10 houses, probably. Megan has one chance to get back on her feet. She let the silence do its work. Then came the sentence I knew was coming. What kind of man keeps a house from his own sister? There it was. Not son, not owner, not the person who had paid the mortgage for 6 years. Man, she was reaching for the oldest lever she knew, the one my family had pulled on me my whole life. A man provides. A man sacrifices. A man does not complain about what he can survive. I kept my voice calm. What are you asking me to do? Relief flickered across her face, so fast she probably did not realize I saw it. Well, she said, reaching into her purse. Nothing complicated. She pulled out a folded document and laid it on my coffee table beside the casserole. Then she placed a pen across the top of it. Just so it's ready, she said, so Sunday can be about family, not paperwork. I did not touch the pen. She smiled harder. It's only putting things where they were always meant to be. Your father and I already took care of our part. This just clears up the little bit left. The little bit, that was me. My name, my ownership, my 6 years of payments, my signature, reduced to a little bit. I looked at the paper without picking it up. Quitclaim deed. My eyes found the blank where my name would go, and something cold moved through my chest. My mother leaned forward. You don't need this house, Brett. You never really did. Megan does. I nodded slowly, the way I had nodded at closing tables and family meetings, and every moment in my life, where yes was easier than being punished for no. I'll think about it, I said. She heard yes. I watched her hear yes. Her shoulders dropped. Her smile turned real for half a second. Not because she loved me, but because she believed the tool had worked. That's my good boy, she said. I was 36 years old. She left the casserole behind. By that evening, the calls started. An aunt called to say how proud she was that I was helping Megan after everything she had been through. A cousin texted, "Man, that's huge of you. Always knew you were the solid one." A woman from my mother's church left a voicemail about how beautiful it was to see a brother take care of his sister. Every message was warm. Every message was pressure-dressed as praise. My mother had told them all before I had agreed to anything. She had made my signature public property. She had turned a decision that belonged to me into a promise I would now have to break in front of witnesses. That was the real trap, not the document, the room. If I refused, I would not just be saying no to my mother. I would be embarrassing her, disappointing the family, making Megan cry, proving to 20 people, already primed to admire my generosity, That money had changed me. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was building a cage out of compliments. And for the first time in my life, I let her. I let the calls come. I let the texts pile up. I let every person in that family believe the same thing Sharon Vance believed. That Brett would handle it. That Brett would be decent. That Brett would sign. I put the casserole in the trash without opening it. Then I sat at my kitchen table, pulled Patricia Holloway's report closer, and started arranging the folder in the order I wanted the room to learn the truth. Aunt Lorraine sent me the screenshot 2 days before Sunday dinner. She called first, and there was a careful flatness in her voice that made me stop what I was doing before she even explained. "I need you to look at something," she said. "Your mother sent it to the family group by mistake. She deleted it fast, but I saw it." My phone buzzed. The image loaded while I stood at my kitchen counter with Patricia Holloway's report open beside me. It was a text from my mother to Megan. "He'll keep paying. He's got nowhere else to go." 8 words. That was all it took to rearrange 36 years. I read it once, then again, slower, because part of me still wanted there to be some other meaning hiding between the letters. There wasn't. She had not misunderstood me. She had not overlooked me. She had calculated me. My mother had built her plan on the belief that I was too lonely to stop paying for a place near the table. For a minute, I just stood there listening to the refrigerator hum. Then I printed the screenshot. After that, my hands stopped shaking. I laid everything across my bed, in the order I would need it: the March 2024 quitclaim deed, the title report, the pending refinance information, 6 years of bank statements, and the screenshot. Each page went into a plain manila folder. Nothing dramatic, no speech written on index cards, no revenge plan, no threats, just paper, the kind of paper my family had used to erase me, and the kind I was going to use to put myself back into the record. Then I took Grandma Ruth's brass bell down from the shelf, wrapped it in the same dish towel I had used after her funeral, and set it on top of the folder in my bag. I called my mother and told her I would come. She sounded delighted. Of course she did. She heard yes. I drove 3 hours back to Brandon, with a folder and a bell in my bag. The whole way there, I kept both hands on the wheel and let the road do what roads do when you have too much time to think. Mile markers passed. Exit signs came and went. The ticket had ridden this same route behind my visor a few days earlier. When I still thought I was bringing good news home, this time, I was bringing the record. My mother had called it a celebration. When I pulled into the driveway, there was a casserole dish sitting on the porch railing, still warm under its foil. Through the front windows, I could see movement everywhere. The house was full. Aunts, uncles, 2 cousins, a few people from my mother's church, nearly 20 people packed into the living room that had held my whole childhood. All of them smiling at me like I was the guest of honor at my own ambush. My mother crossed the room before I had both feet inside. "We're just so glad Brett's home," she announced, taking my hands in hers and squeezing them for the audience. "Where he belongs." The words almost made me laugh. Almost. Megan hugged me, too long, and whispered, "I'm really glad you came." My father hovered near the dining room, refilling glasses that were already full. He looked at me once, then looked away. Behind him, the table was set like Thanksgiving. Good dishes, cloth napkins, the serving bowls my mother only used when she wanted people to notice effort. And at the foot of the table sat Grandma Ruth's chair, pulled out just a little, empty. Near it, like part of the centerpiece, sat a gray-suited man with a small leather folder and a notary stamp. My mother had hired a notary for Sunday dinner. That was when the last soft part of me went quiet. Everyone kept smiling. My mother placed one hand lightly on my back and steered me toward the chair beside the man with the stamp. I let her. I sat where she wanted me to sit. I set my bag against my leg and kept the folder hidden under the table. The notary uncapped his pen. Megan folded her hands. My father stared at his plate, and I waited for my mother to finish building the trap she thought I had already stepped into. It did not take long. My mother tapped a fork against her glass, and the room went quiet the way church rooms go quiet when someone important stands up. Sharon Vance stood at the head of her own table, with her smile fixed perfectly in place and one sheet of paper resting under her hand. "We have so much to be thankful for tonight," she began. "Our family is together. We have been through a hard year." Her eyes moved toward Grandma Ruth's empty chair. Her voice caught just enough to make people lower their heads. "And now, God has blessed Brett in a way none of us could have imagined." Every face turned toward me. My mother's smile warmed. "And Brett, being the good son and good brother he has always been, wants to do something wonderful for Megan tonight." She picked up the paper, walked it to my place, and laid it directly in front of me. Then she placed a pin across the bottom line. "Tonight," she said, loud enough for the whole room, "Brett is giving his sister a fresh start." Her eyes locked on mine. "Aren't you?" Sweetheart, just like that. She made my robbery sound like my idea. The whole room waited for me to pick up the pen. I looked at it first, then at the notary, who had gone very still beside me, then at Megan, whose eyes were shining already, like she had rehearsed gratitude before the gift was even given. My father was studying the tablecloth. Of course he was. Nearly 20 people watched me with second-hand pride over a generosity that was actually theft with my signature at the bottom. I reached into my bag. I did not take out the folder first. I took out the bell. Grandma Ruth's brass dinner bell made a small, flat sound when I set it on the table beside the paper and the pen. A few people glanced at it. Aunt Lorraine, standing near the kitchen doorway, went completely still. I folded my hands beside the bell. I did not raise my voice. I had never once raised my voice in that house, and I was not going to start by giving my mother something easy to point at. Before anyone signs anything, I said, I'd like everyone to see what they're signing. My mother laughed lightly. Brett, honey, this isn't the time. This is family business. It is, I said. That's why everyone should understand it. Her smile thinned. I opened the folder. The first page I placed on the table was the March 2024 quitclaim deed. I slid it past the bell toward the center, where the closest people could read the names. This is the deed where my parents transferred their interest in the house to Megan 2 years ago, I said. A cousin leaned forward. My mother's hand tightened around the back of her chair. Then I laid down the title report. My name is still on the property, I said. It has been for 6 years. There is no clean title to give Megan. There is no clean closing on Monday, not without my signature. The notary looked at the report. He read for a few seconds, then set his pen down. Sir, he said carefully, you are correct, and you are not obligated to sign anything tonight. That was the first crack in the room. I kept going. I laid out the bank statements in order. A little over $2,000 a month, I said, for 6 years, more than $150,000 from my account into this house. No one spoke. While you deeded your share to Megan, I said, looking at my mother now, while you said nothing. Then I placed the last page beside the bell, the screenshot, a text from Sharon to Megan. I said, 2 weeks ago. I read it the way I would read a legal description. Slow, exact, no room for misunderstanding. He'll keep paying. He's got nowhere else to go. The silence after that did not feel empty. It felt full of things finally arriving. For 1 second, my mother just stared at the page. Then Sharon Vance stood so fast her chair scraped backward across the floor. The church smile was gone. What had been hiding underneath it came out in front of everyone. After everything we did for you, she snapped. After everything this family gave you, this is how you repay us. Nobody moved. I looked at her and said nothing. That made it worse. You don't need that house, she said, her voice climbing. You have millions now. Millions. Brett. Megan has nothing. Your sister has nothing. Megan made a small sound, but even she seemed to understand this was not a moment she could cry her way out of. My mother pointed at me like I was the one on trial. You're a grown man. You can buy whatever you want. You can start over anywhere. It should have gone to Megan. It should have always gone to Megan. You were only ever, she stopped. But the room had heard enough. Only ever. She had not finished the sentence, but she had built the ending in every mortgage payment. Every ignored thank you. Every soft little demand dressed up as family. Only ever useful, only ever available, only ever the son who could be counted on to pay, and then disappear. My father put his face in his hands. The notary closed his leather folder and laced his fingers over the top of it. There would be no signature that night from near the kitchen. One of the older churchwomen spoke into the silence. Mrs. Alvarez. She used to slip me butterscotch candies during long sermons when I was a kid. Sharon, she said softly, we always did wonder why he carried it all alone. And just like that, the room finally saw her. I stood up. I did not gloat. I need you to understand that. I had imagined it on the drive over. Some sharp sentence that would finally cut my mother the way she had cut me for years. But when the moment came, there was no taste for it in my mouth. I gathered my pages slowly, in order, the way I had brought them in. Deed, title report, bank statements, screenshot. Then I stopped and left the title report on the table. They could keep that one. They were going to be reading it for a while. I'm not signing, I said. My voice was calm enough to surprise even me, and I'm not angry. My mother stared at me like anger would have been easier for her to understand. I picked up Grandma Ruth's bell. I'm just done paying to belong. Then I walked out of the house I had kept standing and did not look back. I drove toward the one door that had never needed me to earn my way through it. Aunt Lorraine's porch light was on when I pulled up, and the door opened before I could even knock. It was late. I had driven 3 hours with Grandma Ruth's bell, riding on the passenger seat where the winning ticket had ridden days earlier. Lorraine looked at my face and did not ask for the story. She just stepped back and held the door wide. Inside, there was a lamp burning low, a plate already set at the table, and the smell of something kept warm in the oven for a man who might be running late. That was when I almost broke. Not in my mother's kitchen, not in front of the notary. There, at a table where nobody needed my signature first. A few days have passed now, and I'll tell you plainly where things stand. My attorneys are untangling my name from that house on my terms. They are getting me off a loan I should never have been carrying a loan, and sorting out the equity I'm owed for 6 years of payments everyone agreed to forget. The Monday closing did not happen. Of course it didn't. You can't convey what isn't yours to convey. My mother has called. So has Megan. Their voicemails are full of words like misunderstanding, and we're still family. I have not called back, not because I want revenge, because somewhere on that dark drive, I stopped auditioning for a seat at a table that was never going to save me one. I bought myself a small house with a piece of the winnings. Nothing grand, just a quiet place with a kitchen that catches the morning light, the kind Grandma Ruth always said a real home needed. I put her brass bell on a shelf where I can see it while the coffee brews. Tonight, Lorraine called from the kitchen. Supper's ready. I took the bell down and rang it once. The sound rose through the house, clear and bright. It did not mean come be useful. It did not mean come pay. It meant come. There's a place for you here. My grandmother always saved me a seat. Now I save my own.